Okay, we're going to talk about the simple interest formula now. And the way we're going to be using this is we're going to use it to calculate the amount of interest that we owe on a loan. And so a little bit of terminology here. The amount of money that you borrow, that's the principal. Okay, that's that's how much you borrow to begin with. The interest is the money you have to pay for borrowing that money. So you have to pay so much interest in order to borrow the money. And then the effective date of the loan, that's when the loan starts. So that's the day that that's when you take out the loan and when it starts. And then the date that the loan matures, that's when you have to have the loan paid back by. Okay, and then when you pay back the loan, you got to pay back how much you borrow plus the interest that you owe on the loan. And so what the simple interest formula is here is a formula that calculates how much interest you owe on the loan. Okay. So the simple interest formula says the amount of interest that you owe on a loan is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. Okay, so I here is the interest that you owe on the loan. Okay, the P is the principal, and the principal is the amount borrowed. Okay, the amount of the loan. The R is the interest rate. And the T here is the time of the loan. Okay, and the important thing here is that the rate and the time, these must match. Okay, and this was the point of the first video here. So like if I'm going 5 miles per hour for 3 hours, I can just multiply the rate and the time together, no problem. But if it's 5 miles per hour for 20 minutes, well, the miles per hour and the minutes don't match. So I have to convert 20 minutes into 1/3 of an hour, right? So I took 20 divided by 60 to get 1/3 of an hour. Okay, so these, you always got to make sure that those match. So let me show you how the formula works here then. Let's do an example. So let's say I borrow, we'll say $5,000 at, let's say 8.7% interest. And we'll say I do this for 3 years. Okay, now this 8.7% interest, that's going to be annual interest. So if they don't tell you anything more than 8.7% interest, you just assume that it's annual. Okay, if it's a monthly interest rate or a daily interest rate, it'll give you the percentage per month or the percentage per day. Okay, but if they just give you the percentage, then you assume that that's annual interest. So notice this is 8.7% per year, and I'm borrowing it for 3 years. And so the rate and the time, they match. So I can just multiply them together, just like 5 miles per hour for 3 hours. Okay, so the amount of interest that I owe is the principal times the rate times the time. So the principal is the $5,000 that I'm borrowing. Okay, times the rate. Now this rate I have to convert into a decimal. Okay, so that involves moving the decimal point over 2 places, percentage into a decimal. And then it's just for 3 years, so I can just multiply that by 3. and this will give me the amount of interest that I owe. Okay, so 5,000 times 0.087 times 3, and that's like $1,305 interest. $1,305 interest. So that's the amount of interest I owe on this loan. And so when the loan matures and I pay it back, then the amount that I owe, and I'm going to let A equal the amount that's owed when the loan matures, that's going to be the principal, the $5,000, plus the interest that I owe, plus $1,305. So when the loan matures, I owe $6,305. That's how much I owe when the loan matures. That's how much I have to pay back to pay off the loan. Okay? So that's a fairly simple example. So let's try another one where the interest rate and the time don't necessarily match. Okay? So let's say this time I borrow, we'll say I borrow $650 at, let's say, 5.3% interest for, I don't know, we'll say 7 months. Okay, now, notice here, this would be 5.3% interest per year, annual interest, okay, but then the time is 7 months, okay, so these do not match, and so I got to convert 7 months into years, and in the last video we saw that you do that by dividing this 7 by 12. It's like you're taking a year, dividing it into 12 pieces, 12 months, and you're taking 7 of those 12, 7/12 of a year. Okay, so to calculate the interest, I take the principal, $650, times the rate, 0.053, so I'm converting that to a decimal, and then I'm not going to just multiply by 7, because then that would be like it was the loan lasted 7 years, not 7 months, right? So you don't just multiply by 7, you multiply by 7/12. So it's like 7/12 of a year. Okay. And let's see what we get. 650 times 0.053 times 7/12. Okay. And you can actually do it like this without a parentheses there, because of the order of operations is going to work out right in the calculator. I could show you how, but because of the way that you multiply fractions, it works out right. So with the simple interest formula, you really don't need any parentheses. It works out really nice. Okay. And so what I get here is like it rounds up to $20.10. Okay, approximately to the nearest cent. $20.10. So then the amount that I owe would be $650 plus the interest, $20.10. So when the loan matures, I would owe $670.10. Okay. Now, just if we go back to this other one, let's compare these two. For this loan, I owed $1,305 interest. For this loan, I only owed $20 interest. Why is there such a big difference between these two? Okay, why is this one so much more interest than this one? Okay, And at this point I usually have the class tell me, and there's actually 3 reasons. Okay? This one, the amount that you borrow is a lot more, $5,000 as opposed to $650. The interest rate is more, and the time is more. This is 3 years, that's only 7 months. And all 3 of those make a big difference in the end, right? And so we could say something like this: to save on interest, there's 3 things you can do, right? You can borrow less. The less you borrow, the less interest you owe, because your interest is actually a percentage of what you borrow, right? So borrowing less is always better. Like when you buy a house, if you can make a bigger down payment and borrow less money, that's always better. You could take it to the extreme where if your down payment was the whole price of the house, right, and you just paid it off without borrowing the money, then the interest would be 0, right? So borrowing less is always better. The other thing is a smaller interest rate, of course. Then the percentage isn't as much. It's a smaller percentage. So smaller interest rate is better. Okay, and then the third thing is a shorter loan. Don't borrow it for as long. Okay? And all 3 of these make a big difference. The difference between like $20 and over $1,000, right? They make a difference. And so anytime you can borrow less, get a smaller interest rate, get a shorter loan, all 3 of these are great things to do. And in fact, these actually make sense, that if you make these smaller, you make the interest smaller, because the interest is just the product of those 3 things: the principal times the rate times the time, right? Okay. So now I want to teach you something called the banker's rule. Okay, and this isn't that big of a deal. It's just something that bankers have traditionally used, especially before they had computers. This simplified their calculations a lot and made just their work a lot easier. So the banker's rule, all this says is that 1 year, instead of being 365 days, we're just going to make it 360 days. Okay? And we're going to say 1 month. We'll just it doesn't matter what month it is, we'll just kind of average all the months out and say 1 month is 30 days. Okay? So it's kind of like each month is 30 days. 12 of those months would be 360 days. And so then you don't have to worry about which month you're in and how many days that particular month has, anything like that. Okay, this just simplifies things quite a bit. Okay, and so we're going to use the banker's rule when we have to make a conversion. So let me give you an example where we have to do that. So let's say I borrow, I don't know, we'll say $2,500. We'll say at 7.3% interest for let's just say 189 days. Okay, so because I have days, right, this is 7.3% interest per year, and I have days, I have to convert days into years. Now normally there's 365 days in a year, so I'd be taking my year, cutting it into 365 pieces, taking 189 of those pieces, so it'd be like 189 over 365. That's what you would normally do, but due to the banker's rule, we're going to cut that year up into only 360 pieces. That's the idea, okay? So to do the conversion, I'm going to divide 189 by 360. So to calculate the interest, it will be, we'll say 2,500 times 0.073, and now banker's rule, I'm going to divide by 360 instead of 365. That's all the banker's rule is. Okay. So 2,500 times 0.073 times 189 divided by 360. And so this is 95.81. So that's the interest. So the amount that I owe would be 2,500 plus 95.81. So $2,595.81. And that would be how much I owe when the loan matures. So that's using the banker's rule. Okay. Now let's try. Let's do a few more of these, but let's do some where the interest rate is not annual interest. Okay. So a common example where this is actually used is your credit card will oftentimes use a daily interest rate, and the reason for that is because it has to keep an average daily balance going each day, because you're always adding to your card, and so oftentimes they're going to use a daily interest rate. And so let me give you an example of that. Now your daily interest rate is going to be a lot smaller than the annual interest rate, because it's the amount, it's the percent you pay per day, and so it's not going to be a huge percent because it's only per day. So let's say we borrow, we'll say $853 on our credit card, and we'll say that's at 0.0215% per day. We'll say for 81 days. Okay, so this is a really small percentage. Okay, and there's a mistake that can happen here, because this is already as a decimal. You could just drop that percentage and use this, but that wouldn't be right, because this decimal is actually like 2.15%. Okay, and so you still have to move this decimal point over 2 places. So if I convert this into a decimal, I'm moving that over 2 places, and I would actually get this. So it's a really small decimal. Okay, just a small fraction per day. You owe that percent per day. Okay, so to calculate this, what we'll do here is we're going to take the principal, 853, times this interest rate, and it's really small. Okay, I didn't just drop the percentage, I had to move the decimal point over. And now here's where you have to be careful. You might be tempted to divide that by 360, okay, but you're not going to do it in this case, because this is an interest rate, a percentage per day, and so you want the time to be the number of days. They already match, right? This is like 5 miles per hour, 3 hours. You've got a match here. So all I need to do is multiply by 81. It's this percent per day for 81 days. So I just multiply. No conversion in this case. Okay. So 853 times 0.000215 times 81. And so this would be $14.85. Okay, and so the amount that I owe in this case would be 853 plus 14.85. So 853 plus 14.85 would be $867.85, and that's how much I would owe when the loan matures. Okay, so now let me do another one that's a daily interest rate. So let's say I borrow $1,500 at, we'll say 0.0189% per day, and we'll say I do this for 5 months. And so I want to find the interest. So notice in this case, these no longer match, right? This is interest rate per day. This is the number of months. And so what I have to do is I have to convert 5 months into the number of days. And this is where we're going to need that banker's rule again, right? 1 month is equal to 30 days. And so we're going to use that conversion. So we would be taking 5 times 30 to get the number of days. It would be like 150 days. Does that make sense? And that's what I want, number of days. Interest rate per day for the number of days. Okay, so I'm using the banker's rule to convert these months into the days. And so the interest that I owe would be 1,500. I have to move the decimal point over 2 places. And in this case, 150 days. I just multiply by 150 the number of days. Okay. And I get 1,500 times 0.000189 times 150. And that'd be like $42.53. Okay. And so again, using the banker's rule in that case, you had to convert into days. So let's just do a couple more. This time we'll do a monthly interest rate. Okay, and we'll do them where we have to convert. So let's say we borrow $375. We'll say at 1.2% interest per month, and we'll say I do this for we'll say 5 years. Okay, so now it's a monthly interest rate per month, but this is it this is the number of years, right? So I have to convert to the years into months. I got to get the years to match the months. So 5 years into months. So each year has 12 months. And so that would be like 60 months. So 5 years is really 60 months. And so the interest that I owe would be $375. Move the decimal point over, and this would be for 60 months. 375 times 0.012 times 60. And that's like $270. So the amount that I owe when that loan matures would be $645. Okay. We'll do one more here. So let's say I'm going to borrow, we'll say $900, and we'll say at 0.92% interest per month. And we'll say for 360, we'll say 364 days or something like that. Almost a year. That's what made me pause there for a minute. But that's okay, because this is interest rate per month, and this is days, and so I got to convert these days into months. Okay, and I'm going to use the banker's rule here. Okay, so this is a little strange, but it's like I'm taking my month, I'm splitting it up into 30 days, right? And I'm taking, those are the pieces, and I'm taking 364 of those little pieces. So it's like an improper fraction here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm dividing the number of days here by 30 to get the number of months, right? I'm going to divide this into groups of 30 to get the number of months. So maybe I can write like this: 364 divided by 30. 364 days divided by 30. This is like 12.13 months. And this is actually, this is a little less than a year. That's a little more than a year. That's the banker's rule. Because the banker's rule, a year is 360 days, not 365 days. Okay. So that was probably a little confusing to use something so close to a year. But that's okay. So we got 900. Remember, I got to move the decimal point over, so this actually has 2 zeros, 92. It's less than 1%. It's a 0.92%. And then instead of, I don't want to use the rounded version, I'm just going to write 364 divided by 30. Okay. So this would be 900 times 0.0092 times 364 divided by 30. And I get 146. So my interest is $100.46. The amount that I owe will be the 900 plus 100.46. So $1,000.46 is what it ends up being. So so there you go. That's the simple interest formula. The big thing here is sometimes you do have to convert the time so that it matches the interest rate. And for a lot of them, like these annual interest rates, it's pretty simple. If it's annual interest rate, just remember you're taking, if you're given months, you divide by 12. If you're given days, you divide by 360. So, okay. So, good luck. That's the main lecture for today, and then I have a daily activity for you to do, and that is up as well. So, good luck on that, and please let me know if you have any questions.